Because you didn't need it anymore, my father said, clearing his throat like he was announcing dessert, not erasing me. My name is Madeline Brooks, I'm 34. When did my place at this table become something everyone felt free to give away? The Easter candles flickered, wax bending like it was tired of standing straight. I watched the flame nearest me tremble as my aunt laughed, a sharp little sound that slid across the table. My cousins nodded, forks tapping plates in quiet agreement. Someone passed the rolls. Someone else asked for more gravy. Life continued, casually stepping over me. When I finally spoke, my voice didn't rise. It barely existed. My mother didn't even look embarrassed when she rolled her eyes. Don't be greedy in front of everyone, she said, like I'd asked for seconds, not fairness. I folded my napkin once. Then again. The linen felt too soft for what it was soaking up. I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I just looked across the table, past the pastel decorations and the forced smiles, to the quiet man by the window. He had been writing all evening, pen moving slowly like he was listening more than taking notes. Our eyes met. I gave him a small smile. The kind you give when something inside you finally goes still. He closed his notebook. And in that silence, I realized this dinner wasn't about inheritance at all. It was about who they thought I was allowed to be. The scrape of his chair against the floor sounded louder than the prayer we'd said earlier. He stood up slowly, buttoning his jacket with the same calm he'd had all evening. I'm afraid that won't be possible, he said, voice steady, almost polite. Every fork froze in midair. My father blinked, confused, like someone had interrupted a TV show he thought he controlled. And you are? He asked, forcing a laugh that didn't land. The quiet man glanced at me first. Not for permission. For acknowledgement. I nodded once. I'm Daniel, he said. I handle estate transitions. Among other things. My brother smirked, leaning back in his chair. This is a family matter, he said, stretching the word family like a shield. Daniel didn't argue. He opened his notebook again, flipped to a page already creased, already lived in. Actually, he said, it became a legal matter 3 weeks ago. The room felt smaller. Even the candles seemed to hold their breath. My mother's smile tightened. Is this some kind of joke? She asked, tapping her wine glass with one red nail. Daniel looked around the table at the pastel eggs, the folded napkins, the plates half full of food no one was eating now. No, he said gently. This is documentation. I felt the weight of the small envelope in my lap press against my knees. I hadn't opened it yet. I didn't need to. My father pushed his chair back an inch, then stopped like he'd forgotten how legs worked. Documentation of what? He asked too quickly. Daniel didn't answer right away. He reached into his jacket and placed a thin folder on the table. It landed near the ham, close enough that a drop of glaze touched the corner. No one moved it. No one breathed. Grandma's final amendment, Daniel said. Signed. Witnessed. Filed. My aunt let out a short laugh. She was confused near the end, she said, waving her hand like that explained everything. Everyone knows that. I stared at the candle in front of me. The flame bent, then straightened. Bent again. Still burning. She wasn't confused, Daniel replied. She was very specific. My brother leaned forward now. The smirk was gone. Specific about what? Daniel finally looked at him. About who showed up, he said. And who didn't. Silence pressed against my ears. In it I heard Grandma's house, the old clock ticking, the back door sticking, the way she'd hum while folding laundry. I'd been there every Sunday. Even when no one else came. My mother reached for her glass, missed it, laughed it off. This is ridiculous, she said. You're embarrassing her. He meant me. I unfolded my napkin and placed it beside my plate, hands steady now. For the first time that night I felt taller than the table. Daniel slid the folder closer to my brother. Would you like me to read it out loud? He asked. My brother swallowed. I watched his throat move before he spoke. There's no need for that, he said, forcing a laugh. We can talk later. Later. The word my family used when they meant never. Daniel didn't sit. He stayed standing, one hand resting lightly on the back of his chair, like he might leave at any moment. The amendment states that any redistribution discussed in public without the beneficiary present would trigger immediate enforcement. My father's face flushed. Enforcement of what? I felt it then. Not anger. Not fear. Something colder. Clear. Daniel turned a page. The sound was soft, almost respectful. Of the clause transferring temporary control to an external trustee. My aunt scoffed. This is absurd. She wouldn't do that. I finally spoke. She did, I said. My voice surprised even me. Even. She told me she was tired of being spoken for. My mother stared at me like I'd just learned a new language without her. You went behind our backs? She asked. Behind your backs, I thought. As if I'd ever been standing with you. Daniel looked at his watch. By my count, he said, this discussion already qualifies. The candle wax finally spilled over, pooling onto the tablecloth. No one noticed. Daniel closed the folder. Effective immediately, he said, the property is frozen. Frozen. The word landed heavier than any accusation. My father opened his mouth, then closed it. My aunt whispered something to my cousin, but it sounded far away like I was underwater. You can't do that, my brother said, standing up too fast. His chair tipped back, hit the wall, and stayed there like it didn't want to be part of this anymore. Daniel finally sat down. Slowly. Deliberately. I can, he said. And I just did. My mother pressed her napkin to her lips, not to hide emotion but to protect her image. You planned this, she said to me. Her eyes were sharp now. Accusing. You smiled at him. I nodded. I did. That seemed to hurt her more than the paperwork. The room smelled like ham and sweetbread and something sour underneath it all. My cousin's kid started humming to himself, unaware, swinging his legs under the table. Life again, trying to continue. My father lowered his voice. Madeline, he said like he used to when I was a child and in trouble. Be reasonable. Reasonable. When they'd laughed. When they'd nodded. When they'd taken. Daniel slid a single page toward the center of the table. There's more, he said. But this part, he tapped the paper, is the one that changes tonight. I looked at the candle again. The flame was smaller now. Steadier. My brother reached for the page, then stopped like it might burn him. What part? He asked. Daniel didn't answer him. He looked at me instead. I nodded again. Smaller this time. The part where intent is documented, Daniel said. Where patterns are named. My mother stood up halfway, then sat back down. This is Easter, she said weakly. You're ruining Easter. I almost laughed. Instead, I watched my father's hands. They were shaking. He pressed them flat on the table as if holding the room together. Daniel read aloud. Not the legal language. The other part. To my granddaughter Madeline, he said, who sat with me when the house was quiet, who fixed what broke without asking who should pay. The chair next to me creaked. It really did look like it was waiting for someone to say something kinder. My aunt looked at her plate. My cousins avoided my eyes. The nodding had stopped. This clause, Daniel continued, assigns oversight of the property and its income to the person named here. Permanently. My brother's voice cracked. That's not fair. Fair. The word felt unfamiliar, like a coat that never quite fit. Daniel closed the folder again. Fairness, he said softly, wasn't the metric. I exhaled. For the first time all night I wasn't holding anything back. No one spoke for a long moment. Even the child had stopped humming. My father finally looked at me. Really looked. Not as the daughter who should compromise, or the one who didn't need it anymore, but as someone he no longer recognized. So what now? He asked. The question wasn't practical. It was fear wearing a polite face. Daniel gathered his papers with care, like each page mattered. Now, he said, the trustee assumes responsibility. Rent, taxes, access. Nothing changes hands without approval. Approval. My brother sank back into his chair. He laughed once, sharp and hollow. You always had to win, he said to me. Didn't you? I felt the words brush past me and fall to the floor. I reached for the candle and pinched the flame out with my fingers. It stung just enough to feel real. I didn't win, I said quietly. I stayed. My mother's eyes filled not with tears but with calculation. Already rewriting the story in her head. Already deciding how this would sound to outsiders. Daniel stood again. I'll be in touch, he said, nodding to me. In the meantime, enjoy your evening. No one followed him to the door. As it closed behind him, I realized something simple and heavy all at once. They weren't angry because they lost the property. They were angry because they lost control of the story. The room felt smaller now, like the walls had been quietly leaning in all evening. My family's chatter returned in fits and starts, polite but brittle. Forks scraped plates, wine glasses clinked, but the air was different. Tense. Hollow. I reached for the small envelope Daniel had left behind. Inside was a set of documents I hadn't expected. Letters from Grandma, financial statements, even notes on renovations she'd planned. Every line reminded me of years spent unseen, unheard, dismissed, yet still trusted. I folded them carefully, placed them in my bag and stood. My parents' eyes followed me, full of disbelief and a trace of fear. My brother looked ready to speak, then paused as if realizing words wouldn't change the quiet authority I carried now. I walked past the table, past the laughter that tried too hard, past the pastel eggs that had once meant innocence. I opened the door to the backyard. The evening breeze caught my hair. The scent of spring, of new beginnings, wrapped around me. For the first time that night I felt untouchable, not because I had taken revenge but because I had finally claimed what was always mine. They would talk. Whisper. Rewrite the story in every living room, every family group chat. Let them. I didn't need to argue. I didn't need to explain. I had only needed to arrive, calm and certain, and let reality speak. I looked up at the sky. Quiet. Vast. Free. I smiled.